Commander Tae-min Park stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel, watching as they descended toward the planet Lumira. The world below had once been beautiful, with sprawling cities that glowed like constellations against the dark landscape. Now most of those lights were gone, extinguished by the Nexus War that had ravaged the planet. "Final approach to Settlement 12, Commander," the pilot announced. "Sensors show minimal life signs." Tae-min nodded. "Take us down." Earth had sent him here with a simple mission: document the aftermath of the war, establish contact with any survivors, and report back. It was supposed to be routine, the kind of assignment that filled reports but rarely history books. The ship landed with a soft thud on the broken pavement of what had once been a public square. Tae-min led his small team out into the alien air, their environmental suits hissing as they adjusted to the atmosphere. "Spread out. Look for survivors," he ordered, his voice calm despite the destruction around them. The Lumirian settlement lay in ruins. Elegant buildings with their characteristic spiral shapes were now broken husks. The team moved through the debris carefully, scanners sweeping for life signs. After 2 hours of searching, they had found nothing but bodies, the light that naturally emanated from Lumirian skin now dark and lifeless. "Commander, we should prepare to move to the next settlement," his second-in-command suggested. "There's nothing here." Tae-min was about to agree when he heard it, a faint sound coming from a partially collapsed structure ahead. He moved toward it without waiting for the others, climbing over a fallen column. "Commander," someone called behind him. Tae-min ignored them, following the sound to its source. Pushing aside a panel of strange, lightweight metal, he found himself looking into what appeared to be a nursery. Most of the small beds were crushed beneath fallen debris, but one in the corner remained intact. The sound came again, a soft, musical cry. Tae-min approached slowly, his heart pounding. In the bed lay a tiny Lumirian infant, her skin pulsing with soft blue-white light that brightened and dimmed with each breath. She couldn't have been more than a few months old. "I found a survivor," he called into his comm unit. "A child. Bringing her out." He carefully lifted the infant, cradling her against his chest. Her skin brightened at his touch, small hands reaching toward his face mask with curiosity rather than fear. Outside, his team gathered around him as he emerged with the child. "How did she survive?" someone asked. "The nursery was reinforced," Tae-min replied, "and Lumirians can absorb energy from light. The sun coming through the collapsed roof probably kept her alive." His aide ran a scanner over the small being. "She appears healthy, but our data on Lumirian physiology is limited." "What about family?" Tae-min asked. The team spent another hour searching the settlement's records and scanning for any adult survivors, but the results were clear: no surviving. "Family," his aide reported finally. "According to these records, the attack came without warning. This entire settlement was wiped out in minutes." Tae-min looked down at the child in his arms. The Lumirians were known throughout the galaxy for their natural light and their rumored telepathic abilities. They had been a peaceful species, with no significant military. The Nexus War had targeted them specifically because of those telepathic abilities, seeing them as a threat. Now they were nearly extinct. The infant looked up at him with large silver eyes, her tiny fingers pressed against his suit, leaving small glowing prints that slowly faded. "What happens to her now?" one of his team asked. Protocol was clear. The child would be handed over to the Interstellar Relief Agency, who would place her in an appropriate facility until her fate was decided. "I can't leave her," Tae-min said finally, surprising even himself. The words hung in the air. His team exchanged glances, knowing what he was suggesting was unprecedented. Earth had never legally permitted human adoption of non-terrestrial species. Back on the ship, Tae-min made the call to Earth Command, formally requesting permission to adopt the Lumirian infant. The response was immediate and negative. "This is not a stray pet, Commander," the official said. "This is a member of another sentient species with unique biological needs." But Tae-min was persistent. He called in favors, submitted reports on the compatibility of Lumirians with Earth environments, and promised to provide everything the child would need. The adoption process took months of diplomatic negotiations. Tae-min remained on extended, Assignment near Lemurian space, caring for the infant himself while the bureaucrats argued. He learned to understand her glowing patterns, bright when happy, dim when tired, pulsing when hungry. He named her GR, a name that meant light in his grandmother's dialect. Against all odds, Taemin eventually succeeded. He became the first human to legally adopt a non-terrestrial child. As their shuttle approached Earth 6 months after he'd found her, Gia's skin brightened with anxiety, filling the cabin with silvery light. Taemin gently stroked her head, his fingers trailing through the soft, luminescent strands that served as hair for her species. "Don't worry," he whispered. "This is home now." Gia stood in front of the mirror, watching as the soft glow beneath her skin dimmed until it was barely visible. At 13, she had mastered the art of blending in, or at least blending in as much as possible for the only Lemurian on Earth. "Almost ready," Taemin called from downstairs. "Coming," Gia replied, adjusting her high-collared jacket to cover the natural luminescence along her neck. Today was important. Her father, now Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, was bringing her to the World Unity Festival. Leaders from across Earth would be there, along with representatives from 12 alien species. Gia took a deep breath and headed downstairs. Taemin smiled proudly when he saw her. "You look perfect," he said. The hovercar ride to the festival grounds was quiet. Gia watched the city pass by, noting how much it had changed in the 10 years since she'd arrived. More alien visitors walked the streets now. Shops displayed goods from across the galaxy. Yet she still felt like the strangest person in any. "Room, Dad," she said suddenly. "Do you ever wish I was more human?" Taemin looked surprised. "Never. Not for 1 second. It would be easier." "Easier isn't always better," he replied. "Your differences make you who you are." The festival grounds were crowded. As they walked through the entrance, Gia felt the familiar weight of stares. Children pointed. Adults tried not to look, then looked anyway. "Dad, they're staring again," Gia whispered, her skin dimming to its faintest glow. Taemin squeezed his daughter's hand. "Let them stare. You're extraordinary." Gia tried to believe him, but it was hard. School had been difficult. This year, she excelled in her classes. Her Lemurian brain processed information differently, giving her advantages in mathematics and science. But socially, she struggled. Her classmates found her fascinating but frightening, especially after the incident last month. "You're going to fail the test," Minho had thought while looking at her across the classroom. "I studied very hard, actually," Gia had replied. The problem was, Minho hadn't spoken aloud. His thoughts had simply drifted into her mind, clear as spoken words. The class had fallen silent. After that, many students kept their distance. At the festival, Taemin led her toward the diplomatic section, where various Earth officials greeted him warmly. Gia stood slightly behind him, observing the subtle body language and social cues her father had trained her to notice. At home, Taemin had converted their basement into a small museum of Lemurian culture. He'd spent years collecting artifacts, recordings and data files from her homeworld. They practiced diplomatic protocols side by side with Lemurian meditation techniques. "Someday," he often said, "you may need to represent both worlds." Ambassador Park, a deep voice called GR, turned to see a tall, blue-skinned dignitary approaching. She recognized him as Neuro, a representative from the Stellar Alliance, a coalition of species from the galaxy's inner rim. "Neuro, welcome to Earth," Taemin greeted him warmly. "May I present my daughter, Gia?" The alien's 4 eyes widened, slightly as he looked at her. "The Lemurian child, I've heard much about you." Gia bowed in the traditional Stellar Alliance manner, right hand open at the chest, left hand open at the side. "I'm honored, Representative Neuro." "Your father has taught you well," Neuro said with approval. "Would you mind if I borrowed him?" "For a moment. Council business." Gia nodded and watched as they stepped away. She wandered toward a display of traditional Earth dances, trying to ignore the whispers that followed her. Later that evening, Taemin hosted a small reception at their home for close diplomatic contacts. Gia helped serve refreshments, her natural glow brightened by the excitement of being involved in her father's work. As the evening wound down, she noticed Neuro studying her intently from across the room. When most guests had departed, he approached. Taemin holding a small device. "May I speak with you privately?" he asked. Taemin nodded, and they moved to his study. Jia, curious, lingered near the door. "I hope you don't mind," Neuro was saying, "but I took a scan of your daughter earlier. Something about her markings seemed familiar." He activated the device, which projected a holographic image of Jia's face, focusing on the constellation-like pattern of slightly brighter spots across her forehead. "Do you know what these patterns mean?" the visitor asked Taemin, tracing the dots on the image. "They're common among Lumerians," Taemin replied with a shrug. "A genetic variation like human freckles." Neuro shook his head slowly. "No, these are not common at all. These are royal lineage markers." Jia's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" Taemin asked, leaning forward. "Before the Nexus War, I served as a diplomatic liaison to Lumira for 15 years, Neuro explained. "I came to know their culture well. These specific patterns appear only in the direct bloodline of the ruling house." He manipulated the hologram, zooming in on specific points in the pattern. "See these 7 points? They form what Lumerians call the crown of 7 stars. It's the royal crest. Every member of the royal family carries this pattern." Taemin sat back, stunned. "There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake," Neuro said firmly. "Your daughter is Lumerian royalty." Outside the door, Jia's skin glowed brightly with shock, illuminating the hallway. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Royalty? It couldn't be true. She was just Jia, the strange alien girl, the outsider. "Does this change anything?" she heard her father ask. "It changes everything," Neuro replied. "There are Lumerian survivors, scattered across 3 systems. They've been searching for any remaining members of the royal family. If they knew she existed..." Jia didn't wait to hear more. She ran to her room, her mind racing. All these years of feeling different, of not belonging anywhere, and now this. She wasn't just any Lumerian, she was their princess. She looked at her reflection, the faint pattern on her forehead now seeming to burn with new significance. The face that had always made her different now carried a meaning she never could have imagined. The morning of Jia's 18th birthday began like any other. She woke early, her skin glowing softly in the dim room. For a moment, she just lay there, thinking about how much her life had changed over the past 5 years. After learning about her possible royal heritage, Taemin had kept the information private. They agreed to wait until she was older, before deciding what to do. In the meantime, she had thrown herself into her studies, graduating from high school 2 years early and entering the diplomatic academy, where she was now in her 2nd year. Jia got up and dressed in her favorite blue outfit, one that complemented her natural glow rather than hiding it. She no longer dimmed her light to blend in. She had learned to accept her differences, even if others hadn't. Downstairs, she found Taemin in the kitchen, preparing her favorite breakfast. "Happy birthday," he said, hugging her. 18 years old. I can hardly believe it." "Thanks, Dad," she replied, smiling. "It's just another day." "Not quite," Taemin said, his expression turning serious. "I have something important to show you after breakfast." Jia felt a flutter of anxiety. She had sensed her father keeping something from her lately. His thoughts had been carefully guarded whenever they were together. After they ate, Taemin led her to his study. The room was different. The desk had been moved aside, and a strange device sat in the center of the floor, a spherical projector she had never seen before. "What's that?" she asked. "A gift from Representative Neuro," Taemin explained. "He's been helping me research your heritage." Jia's skin brightened with anticipation. Since that night 5 years ago, Neuro had become a regular visitor and a friend to their family. He had taught Jia much about general Lumerian culture, but they had never directly discussed her possible royal connections. Taemin activated the device. The lights in the room dimmed automatically as a 3-dimensional star map filled the space. Dozens of star systems appeared, with 3 planets highlighted in blue. "These are the current Lumerian settlements," Taemin explained. "About 10,000 survivors in total." Jia moved around the projection, studying the locations. "So few," she whispered. "Yes." Taemin took a deep breath. "Jia, it's time I shared everything with you. Please sit down." She sat on the small couch against the wall. Tamin joined her, holding a datapad. According to the Stellar Alliance records, you're not just any Lumirian. You're Princess Hanul, last descendant of the royal house of Lumira. GR. Sat motionless, her skin pulsing with intense light that filled the room. The name Hanul echoed in her mind, somehow familiar, like a half-remembered dream. But that's impossible, she finally said. I'm just... me. Neuro confirmed it years, ergo with genetic testing. Tamin continued gently. Your DNA matches the royal bloodline. The settlement where I found you was not random. It was a royal nursery, hidden for your protection during the war. He handed her the datapad. On it was an image of a Lumirian couple, tall, elegant beings, with the same distinctive pattern on their foreheads that Gia had. Your birth parents, Tamin said softly. Queen Lyra and King Sorin. They sent you to the nursery just before the capital was attacked. Gia stared at the image, searching their faces for some connection, some memory. There was nothing, and yet something about the woman's eyes seemed familiar. The surviving Lumirians have been searching for you, Tamin continued. They've established small colonies on 3 different planets. They need leadership, they need you. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Gia asked, her voice shaking. I wanted you to have a normal childhood, Tamin replied, and I needed time to learn about Lumirian royal traditions, to prepare you properly. Neuro has been helping me gather information, artifacts, everything you would need. Gia stood up and walked back to the star map, watching as the 3 blue planets rotated, slowly. I know nothing about being Lumirian, let alone their princess, she protested. How can I lead people I've never even met? You know more than you think, Tamin smiled. Your human education in diplomacy and interstellar relations, combined with your natural abilities, you have a unique perspective no Lumirian ruler has ever had. Gia touched one of the blue planets, and the projection zoomed in to show a small settlement nestled in a valley. Lumirians moved about their daily lives, their skin glowing just like hers. For the first time, she saw beings who looked like her, not in pictures or recordings, but alive and real. There's something else, Tamin said, joining her by the projection. 3 days ago, I received this. He adjusted the controls, and the image changed to show a formal message written in flowing Lumirian script. It's a formal petition from the Lumirian Council of Elders, he explained. They've finally discovered you're alive through Neuro's careful hints. They're requesting that Princess Hanul return to her people. Gia's heart raced. All her life, she had felt caught between 2 worlds, never fully human, yet disconnected from her Lumirian heritage. Now her past was calling to her. What should I do, she whispered. That's your decision, Tamin said. You can decline, you can continue your life here. The Academy would certainly welcome you back for your next term. Gia gazed at the holographic star map showing the scattered Lumirian settlements. These were her people, reduced to refugees scattered across the stars. They had lost everything, their homeworld, their culture, their future, just as she had, or had she? Unlike them, she had been given a second chance, a new home, a loving father, an education in both human and Lumirian ways. Perhaps that wasn't an accident. I can't abandon them if they need me, she said finally. Tamin's eyes filled with pride, though Gia could sense his sadness too. If you choose this path, he said, you should know it won't be easy. The royal position is ceremonial in many ways, but it carries real responsibilities. You would be the symbol of Lumirian unity and hope. Will you come with me? Gia asked, suddenly afraid. For as long as you need me, Tamin promised. But this is your journey, Hanul. The name sent a strange shiver through her. Hanul, Princess Hanul of Lumira. I think I'll always be Gia too, she said softly. Of course you will. Tamin smiled. That's what makes you special. You belong to both worlds. Gia took one last look at the images of her birth parents, then turned to the map of her scattered people. She had a long journey ahead, not just across space, but across the divide between who she had been and who she needed to become. When do we leave? She asked. The light from Gia's fingertips wavered slightly as she tried to maintain her concentration. The royal emblem, A seven-pointed star surrounded by spiraling rays hung in the air before her, created entirely from her own bioluminescence. "It's fading on the left side," Sung Ho observed, his ancient face creased with disapproval. The elderly Lumerian scholar had once been advisor to Jia's birth parents. Now his sole purpose was teaching her the ways of her people. "I'm trying," Jia said through gritted teeth. "Try harder, Princess Hanul," Sung Ho replied, using her royal name. "Your ancestors could maintain this form while conducting complex diplomatic negotiations." Jia took a deep breath, steadying her mind. The light from her fingertips brightened, and the emblem stabilized. She had been practicing this particular skill for weeks, but it still required intense concentration. "Good," Sung Ho nodded after a moment. "Now maintain it while we discuss the trade proposals." He began reading from a data tablet, outlining complex trade arrangements between the Lumerian settlements and neighboring systems. Jia listened carefully, dividing her attention between his words and the glowing symbol. "What concerns might the Altair representatives raise about Section 3? Sung Ho asked suddenly. "They'll object to the tariff structure," Jia answered without hesitation. "Their economy relies on mineral exports, which are specifically taxed at a higher rate in Section 3, Paragraph 2. Sung Ho smiled, a rare occurrence. "Correct. And how would you address this concern?" "I would offer a graduated implementation over 3 years, giving their economy time to diversify," Jia replied. The emblem remained steady as she spoke, her control improving with each session. After 6 months of intensive training on the Lumerian settlement world of New Haven, Jia had made remarkable progress. Each day followed a strict schedule. Morning meditation to strengthen her telepathic abilities, followed by lessons in Lumerian history and culture, then diplomatic training in the afternoon. Evenings were dedicated to physical training, where she learned to use her natural light abilities as tools and, when necessary, weapons. The training was difficult, but Jia was determined. She had discovered a deep connection to her heritage that she never knew existed. The scattered Lumerian survivors, barely 10,000 in total, had welcomed her with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Many doubted that a human-raised princess could truly understand their ways. Jia worked hard to prove them wrong. "That's enough for today," Sung Ho said finally. "Now you have improved, Princess." Coming from Sung Ho, this was high praise. Jia let the light emblem fade and flexed her tired fingers. "Thank you, Master Sung Ho. Will you be attending the council meeting tomorrow?" "Of course. It is an important step." The meeting would be Jia's first official appearance before the full Lumerian Council of Elders. She would present her proposal for a permanent sanctuary planet, a new homeworld where all Lumerians could reunite. "You should rest," Sung Ho advised. "Tomorrow we'll test all you have learned." Jia nodded and bowed respectfully before leaving the training chamber. Outside, Taimin was waiting. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better," Jia smiled. "Sung Ho actually said I've improved," Taimin laughed. A historic moment. They walked together through the settlement, which consisted of simple but elegant structures built into the side of a mountain. Lumerians they passed bowed respectfully to Jia, their skin glowing in patterns that communicated their emotions more clearly than words. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Taimin asked. "I think so," Jia replied. "Earth's Interstellar Council has agreed to support my proposal. With their backing, I believe we can convince the Galactic Alliance to grant us the sanctuary planet." "It's a good plan," Taimin agreed. "Your diplomatic training has served you well." "I had a good teacher," Jia smiled. That night, Jia reviewed her proposal one last time before meditating. Her quarters were simple, with few personal possessions, except for a small hologram of Taimin and herself on her 16th birthday. She kept it as a reminder of the home and family that had shaped her. The next morning, Jia dressed in traditional Lumerian royal garments, flowing robes embedded with bioluminescent crystals that complemented her natural glow. As she entered the council chamber, hundreds of Lumerians rose to their feet, their skin pulsing with light in the traditional greeting for royalty. The Council of Elders sat in a half-circle at the front of the room, 12 Lumerians, each representing a different aspect of their culture and heritage. Sung Ho sat among them, representing knowledge and wisdom. "Princess Hanul," the head elder greeted her, "we welcome you to address the council." Gia stepped forward, her heart pounding. This was the moment she had been preparing for since learning of her heritage. She activated the holographic display, showing her proposal for the new Lumerian homeworld. She was halfway through her presentation when it happened. Gia felt a sudden spike of hostile intent at the edge of her consciousness, a benefit of her now well-trained telepathic abilities. She turned just as a figure burst through the chamber doors. The intruder wore the distinctive armor of the Krell Dominion, historical enemies of the Lumerians who had played a significant role in the Nexus War. In their hand was a weapon aimed directly at Gia. The room erupted in chaos. Council members dove for cover. Security personnel rushed forward but were too far away. Gia didn't panic. In that split second, her training took over. She reached out with her mind, sensing the attacker's intentions. The assassin would fire in exactly 3 seconds, aiming for her heart. Gia raised her hand. The light from her palm suddenly intensified, forming a blinding flash that momentarily disoriented the assassin. In that moment of confusion, she moved, not away from the danger but toward it. Using the combat techniques Earth's defense forces had taught her, Gia grabbed the attacker's wrist, redirecting the weapon away from both herself and the crowd. With her other hand, she pressed against the assassin's temple, sending a focused pulse of telepathic energy that rendered them unconscious without causing permanent harm. The entire incident lasted less than 10 seconds. When security personnel reached her, they found Gia standing calmly beside the unconscious assassin. "Secure them, but do not harm them," she ordered. "We need to know who sent them." The incident, recorded and broadcast across galactic networks, changed everything. Political leaders who had dismissed Gia as a curiosity now requested meetings. The Galactic Alliance expedited her sanctuary planet proposal. Even the Krell Dominion issued a formal apology, claiming the assassin was a rogue. "Agent, you handled that perfectly," Taemin told her later. "Your mother would be proud." Gia smiled, knowing he meant both her birth mother and the values he had taught her. She had neutralized a threat without taking a life, demonstrating both strength and compassion. A human-raised alien princess who embodied both worlds was something the galaxy had never seen before. And Gia was just beginning to realize the power of that unique perspective. The Hall of Light gleamed with the natural bioluminescence of thousands of Lumerians. The massive crystal dome above captured the light of the twin suns, scattering rainbow patterns across the gathered crowd below. Representatives from 12 different species filled the hall, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic civilization. At the center stood Gia, her skin glowing with an intensity that matched her emotions. 5 years had passed since she'd learned of her heritage. 1 year since the Galactic Alliance had granted the Lumerians this new world, a planet with conditions perfectly suited to their light-absorbing biology. They named it New Lumira, a fresh start for a people who had nearly been erased from existence. Gia wore ceremonial robes woven with threads that amplified her natural light. Around her neck hung a simple earth necklace, a gift from Taemin on her first day of school. The blending of both cultures was deliberate. She was not just Lumerian royalty, she was a bridge between worlds. Elder Sung Ho approached, carrying the crown of stars on a crystal cushion. The ancient artifact had been rescued from Lumira before its destruction, a thin circlet of metal that captured and refined the wearer's natural light into 7 perfect points. "Princess Hanul," Sung Ho announced, using her royal name, "daughter of Queen Lyra and King Sorin, last of the royal bloodline, do you accept the responsibility of leadership?" "I do," Gia replied, her voice clear and steady. "Do you swear to protect and guide our people, to honor our traditions while forging a new path?" "I swear it," she said. Sung Ho placed the crown on her head. It immediately responded to her energy, 7 brilliant points of light emerging from the metal to form a star-like pattern above her. Gia turned to face the assembled crowd. In the front row sat Taemin, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and tears. Beside him was Representative Neuro, who had helped them discover her heritage, and various Earth officials who had supported the Lumerian Resettlement Project. "Today marks not just my acceptance of responsibility to the Lumerian people," Gia addressed the gathered representatives. "It also represents a new beginning for interspecies relations throughout the galaxy." She paused, letting her gaze travel across the diverse faces before her. "I stand before you as someone who belongs to two worlds. I was born Lumirian, but raised human. I carry both heritages within me, and I am stronger for it. Our differences need not divide us, they can unite us if we allow them to." The crowd responded with approving murmurs. Gia continued, outlining her vision for New Lumira not just as a Lumirian homeworld, but as a center for diplomatic exchange and cultural understanding. After the ceremony came a reception, where representatives from across the galaxy offered gifts and congratulations. Gia moved among them with the diplomatic grace Taimin had taught her, combining it with the formal Lumirian light patterns that communicated respect and gratitude. "You've done well," Taimin said when they finally had a moment alone. "Better than I ever could have imagined when I found you." "I couldn't have done it without you," Gia replied, embracing him. The next 3 years were filled with intense work. Gia divided her time between establishing New Lumira's infrastructure and traveling throughout the galaxy on diplomatic missions. The scattered Lumirian colonies gradually relocated to their new homeworld, bringing with them skills and knowledge gained during their years of exile. Gia's unique upbringing gave her advantages no previous Lumirian leader had possessed. When negotiating with humans, she understood their perspectives and concerns. When dealing with other species, she approached them with the open curiosity she had learned growing up as the only alien on Earth. Her greatest achievement came in the 3rd year of her reign. After months of careful preparation, Gia invited leaders of the Krell Dominion, the traditional enemies of her people, to New Lumira. The Krell had contributed to the destruction of the original Lumirian homeworld, and many considered them monsters. "We cannot build a future by clinging to the grievances of the past," Gia told her concerned council of elders. "The cycle of hatred must end somewhere. Let it end with us." The peace talks lasted 14 days. Gia employed both Lumirian, telepathic techniques and human diplomatic strategies. Where previous leaders had failed for centuries, she succeeded. The treaty signed that day ended hostilities that had persisted for over 500 years. Word of her accomplishment spread quickly. Other species in conflict sought her mediation. New Lumira became a diplomatic hub where enemies could meet on neutral ground. The governance system she established, combining traditional Lumirian consensus building with human-style representative democracy, became a model studied throughout the galaxy. Perhaps her most personal achievement was the Interstellar Adoption Initiative. Remembering her own childhood as the only Lumirian on Earth, Gia created legal and social frameworks supporting cross-species families. The program provided resources, education, and community for children growing up between worlds. Children shouldn't have to choose between their birth heritage and their adoptive culture, she explained at the initiative's launch. They should be allowed to embrace both, becoming bridges between worlds just as I have tried to be. On quiet evenings, when the demands of leadership eased momentarily, Gia would retreat to her private quarters. There, among a few personal possessions, she kept a hollow image of herself as an infant in Taimin's arms, taken shortly after they had arrived on Earth. The image captured both her fear and his determination. During his frequent visits to New Lumira, Gia and Taimin often sat together, looking at that image and marveling at how far they had come. "You saved more than just me that day," she told him during one such visit. "You showed the galaxy what's possible when we see beyond differences." Taimin smiled, the lines around his eyes deeper now, his hair graying at the temples. "No," he replied gently. "You did that yourself, princess." Gia's light brightened with emotion. In the language of her birth people, this pattern meant deep love and gratitude. No words were needed between them. They were family, not by blood or species, but by something greater. Outside her window, the lights of New Lumira sparkled as night fell. Thousands of Lumirians and hundreds of other species now called this planet home. Children of different species played together in schools and parks. Diplomatic envoys arrived daily, seeking wisdom or offering alliance, all because one human man had looked at an alien child and see not a difference to fear but a life to cherish,